second week of Advent is on peace. So again, we light our first candle, the candle of faith. And now we light our second candle, a candle of peace. So we focus on the indwelling presence, the presence of peace within. So I was remembering when I was in high school, I was in the choir of the Congregational Church. And we used to do the Messiah, which is a big deal. It was a big choir. And I kept remembering Prince of Peace, Prince of Peace, Prince of Peace. And so I thought, that's really what I want to kind of focus on today is Prince of Peace, and kind of feel into what is Prince of Peace? What does that mean? It's not something that's in the New Testament at all. But I remembered so clearly the words in the Messiah, for unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government shall be upon his shoulder, and his name shall be called Wonderful Counselor, the Mighty God, the Prince of Peace. Right? The Prince of... Remember that? I mean, for those of you who don't, maybe you didn't sing in the choir, but, it was a powerful kind of reminder for me. And so I wanted to explore a little bit more about that. And kind of the more I got into it, the more it kind of felt so relevant for our lives today. I was thinking about my mom. Okay, she would have been 101 today. She was born right after World War I started in 1914. And we're still living in a world with war, over 100 years later. But we can look back at the time of Isaiah, who was the one who spoke about, for unto us a child is born. And that was 700 years before the birth of Jesus. And they were dealing with wars in that time. I want to read the Bible passage just because I like to kind of frame things in the context of the Bible. And then we're going to look a little bit at history, and then guess what? We're going to look at the metaphysics, because that's my vibe all the time. And it's all about you, and it's all about me, and it's all about all of us. And the stories are all about all of us all the time. So this is from Isaiah, and think this was 700 years before the birth of Christ. As a prophet, this is what he said. The people walking in darkness have seen a great light. On those living in the land of deep darkness, a light has dawned. You have enlarged the nation and increased their joy. They rejoice with you as people rejoice at the harvest, as warriors rejoice when dividing the plunder. For as in the day of Midian's defeat, you have shattered the yoke that burdens them, the bar across their shoulders, the rod of their oppressor. Every warrior's boot used in battle and every garment rolled in blood will be destined for burning, will be fuel for the fire. For unto us a child is born. Unto us a son is given, and the government will be upon his shoulders, and he will be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. Of the greatness of his government and peace there will be no end. He will reign on David's throne and over his kingdom, establishing and upholding it with justice and righteousness from that time on and forever. The zeal of the Lord Almighty will accomplish this. Powerful prophetic words, powerful prophetic words. And it was really interesting to me because he doesn't say a child will be born. A child is born. Unto us a child is born. And, I never really thought about it like that before because I thought, well, he's a prophet, so he's talking about something that's going to happen, which, of course, is what most religions, Christian religions, are talking about. This was the prophecy, and here's Jesus being born, and he's the one. But I found this Charles Fillmore, 1908, very interesting understanding of what this is. And I want to share it with you because Charles Fillmore, for those who don't know, was one of the co-founders with Myrtle, his wife, of the Unity Movement, which basically came into being in 1889. So he wrote this in 1909, so it wasn't even 20 years into the kind of development of the Unity Movement. But hear what he has to say, because I just thought this was extremely, extremely interesting. Now I have it's on the back side of this piece of paper. So he says, first of all, David, saying that the prophecy says that this being will come out of the house of David. David typifies the power of love, and it was upon this throne of love that the Prince of Peace was to reign. The same symbol is used in the connection with Jesus. He came from the house of David, or love. The Christ is born to consciousness in no other way but through the quickening of the soul of divine love. This Christ is not restricted to, quote, and he quotes, the chosen of God, or, quote, the elect, nor those who are known to the world as Christians, but is a principle in being. Christ is a principle in being, expressing itself through human consciousness whenever conditions for it are made right. This Christ of God is a fact of man's being, just as poetry or mathematics or music are facts of our being. It remains latent or unmanifest until it's brought into visibility through cultivation. The Christ seed has its centers of manifestation prepared and waiting in the human form. And when man longs for God and reaches out for the good, the true, and the beautiful, there is an uplifting of the whole consciousness, both mental and physical. Brain centers that have been inactive are quickened. The finer nerve centers of the organism begin to vibrate, and there is gradually formed in one this mind of Christ. Paul said truly, we have the mind of Christ. Those who are versed in soul development tell us that the birth to consciousness of this higher principle of being is attended with a quickening of brain cells in the top of the head, and that the phrenological bump named spirituality is built up and becomes the center of mighty spiritual forces. Is that not really interesting? This is Charles Fillmore in 1908. So I'm wondering, do you have the bump? Do you have the bump? I'm like, the bump of spirituality. I just thought this was really powerful. And especially for me, I love the way he said, this isn't about Christians. It's not about people who think they're elect, because the Jewish culture, they had all the whole elected, we're elected. And we hear a lot about people who are chosen. But Fillmore's going right from the get-go. This is unity. This is not about a particular sect, somebody who believes a certain thing. This is about all humankind, that we all have this capacity to hold this higher consciousness. And this is what the birth of the child, the Christ child, the birth of the Prince of Peace is all about for us. It's not about a time and space. We celebrate it every year because we celebrate it as the birth of Jesus, but it is much more universal than that. And I just want to kind of frame what I'm going to talk about today. You thought that was all I was going to talk about, but it's not. There's always more. I have so much fun doing this. Anyway, so what I wanted to do was I wanted to kind of look at what was going on before Jesus was born. Well, we know there have been wars. There are lots of wars. There are wars everywhere. And so during the time before Jesus was born, the area where he lived, and he was Jewish, we know that, Judea was being ruled by Rome. Herod the king was was the one who was brought in from Rome to rule that area. And so there were various ways that people who were part of the culture of that time responded to the Roman rule. And we can think of that Roman rule, it was very violent, it was oppressive to them. And so I was very curious to understand what were the different, basically sects, and you will understand, some of you will know these sects, because I really thought, well, these sects can really, not sex, S-E-X, sex. Sex. Today we have a lot of sexes, so I don't know, there may be more than 4. I'm not clear on that one, but anyway, so these are 4 that you may have heard of. And what I want us to do is I want us to see, it's kind of easy to see who these people are running out in the world. We can project it out in our world very easily because we're living in a time of conflict, aren't we? So one of these people we could call, they were the Zealots. And the Zealots were like adamant, they were angry, they were on it, they were going to take action right away. We might know some Zealots. We might have some Zealots in our family. But they were the voice of basically anger and reaction. Whatever was going on, I'm against it. Wasn't that a song or something? Whatever it is, I'm against it. Anyway, think zealot. And you know, zeal is one of the 12 powers. So interesting to be aware of that because it's one of our capacities. It's a capacity of being enthused in theos. Enthusiasm is in theos. So being divinely enthused as opposed to being an angry zealot. But so being a zealot was one of the ways that the people during the time before Jesus was born, and even after, that people responded to the rule of Rome and to what was going on culturally, politically, socially. Another group was the Sadducees. And the Sadducees, they were the aristocratics. They were the ones who were like, we don't want to rock the boat here. We like our life. We want it the way it is. They were kind of like, you could think about more like, they just want to please everyone. Let's just keep everybody calm, kind of people pleaser Sadducees. That's who the Sadducees. They were all about compromise so that they could stay in power. So think about our world right now. We might have that kind of quality going on in our world right now. Certainly we could see that politically, you know, we could see that economically in our world. It's very, very, you know, just, they're kind of like, let's just play the game and keep up appearances. Keep up appearances. Maybe there's somebody in the family that you know that's like that. So we have the Zealots, and then we had the Sadducees, and then we had the Pharisees. And they were like law and order. This is the law. I'm right. You're wrong. They're all about judgment. And they were all about living by the letter of the law. That was the way they believed everything. They were kind of, you could think of them as like the perfectionists. Things just had to be absolutely perfect. And, you know, we probably have people like that in our life right now. And if you look inside, you could think about that as like your inner critic is kind of like the Sadducee, the Pharisee, the one that makes sure that everything is perfect, towing the line. So they were basically coming from a place of comparison, a lot of comparison, a lot of condemnation, and asking everyone to follow their path. Then finally there were the Essenes. And you know, it's really interesting because I think we often, in unity, we often think about ourselves, our community, and the Essenes were the ones that they believe the Dead Sea Scrolls came out of the writings of the Essenes. The Essenes basically left town and went off on their own and lived in the desert. They withdrew. They didn't want anything to do with any of what was going on. They went off to pray and meditate. So you could kind of think of the Essenes as somehow like escapists in a way, withdrawing and just like not going to be bothered. I'm not going to get involved. I'm not going to look. If I don't see it, it doesn't exist. So it's powerful to think about these different, basically they were different sects in the Jewish culture, but when we start to look at it, we can begin to see how they're qualities of personality, ego qualities of personality that are reacting to conflict, reacting to change. And we're living in times of change. So we can begin to see just identifying these different qualities, the zealot who's out there and, against and enraged, the Sadducee energy who just wants to kind of keep everything calm, make sure just calm the waters. We want to make sure everybody's okay. We don't want to rock the boat. Or the Pharisees who, letter of the law, you do it my way or the highway. Or the Essenes where, I'm out of here, I can't deal with this kind of thing. So these were the energies that were in the world at the time when the Christ was born, Jesus was born, and then when Jesus, during his 3 years of ministry in his 30s, he came in, and what he did was totally rebellious. It was a fifth way of showing up in the world. He basically broke all the rules of these four different groups of people or four different qualities of energy that were out there. He faced the empire. He faced Rome. He faced Herod instead of fighting. Very different than what a zealot would do, right? And he stood for truth, but he did not collude with others. He did not collude with people to kind of manage things like the Sadducees would do to keep the peace. He also taught righteousness. There is a right way, but from a place of love. It was that house of divine love, the house of David that Charles Fillmore talked about, was teaching truth from a place of divine wisdom, of knowing our connectedness and our oneness, of being willing to hold the space for forgiveness. This is a very different way than the Pharisees of his day, who had the right was only one narrow way. And finally, like the Essenes, Jesus went off to pray. Often during the stories in the New Testament, we see Jesus going to the mountaintop to pray. But he always came back. He didn't stay on the mountaintop. So he was a rebel, and that quality that he brought into the world as the Prince of Peace was a new presence that basically we are called, as Charles Fillmore said, we're called to embody this higher spiritual presence in our lives. To no longer be driven by a sense of judgment or needing to compare or even to kind of collaborate and coalesce with something that we know is not true, or to totally distance ourselves from what's going on. So it's a powerful, powerful understanding that we've been basically given. And I just love the idea of kind of looking inside, because it's easy for us, isn't it, to point out there? How easy is it for us? We just can turn on the news and we can have our opinions about who's right and who's wrong. And we can begin to see these different kind of personality types out in other people, can't we? Am I the only one who does that? I actually resisted the temptation to name anyone. It would have been fun. It would have been easy, you're right. But I thought we all have our own, we have our own opinion about who's being a zealot and who's self-righteous and who's trying to control, who's complicit and just wanting to stay. Won't go there. So the part that's so important for us is not to look out there and find these qualities of being. What's important for us is to begin to see where some of these things are going on inside of us, and to be able to bring in this fifth way, this Christ consciousness, this higher presence to any particular situation. This is why I called it the inner council of peace, because I I mean, I can only look inside myself, and I can project on every member of my family to kind of identify what they're doing or how they're showing up. But my experience is most of these qualities, the zealot, the Sadducee, the Pharisees, and the Essene, most of these qualities reside in each one of us in certain moments in our life, in certain situations in our life. And I have to tell you, I resisted the temptation to do another kitchen table play for you. But I have it all in mind, and I won't do it. But you could do it for yourself. You might even have the actual characters in mind. I thought about, the kid, the teenager who's going to always rebel against absolutely everything, right? That's just kind of who you are as a teenager. And then the dad who's strict, and this is how we do things. And mom was like, oh, let's just make nice. Right? And then the daughter who's already gone to college, she's like, I don't care what you do, I'm going to college, I'm out of here. And I thought, well, this would be kind of playing out all these different parts in a family. But we do that inside, don't we? And then how do we bring this presence of peace? I mean, we don't necessarily have to be the Good Samaritan, but we could be the Good Samaritan in our life. There might be some situation in our life where we're called to help someone that nobody else wants to be around, right? We could be like Jesus. Jesus was so radical. The Pharisees were against him because he healed on Sunday. Can you imagine? I mean, we do everything on Sunday, right? Run to the store, go to the store this week, go to Costco today, not. But those were rules, and so Jesus was healing people on Sunday. That was like so radical, so extremely radical. He was burning bridges. He was doing things that no one else had done before. And I think that this is where we can begin to feel what it means to be the Prince of Peace, to carry this higher consciousness within ourselves. Instead of the immediate reaction we might have of, being angry or needing to make peace with everyone, that we can pause, just as Jesus did. He went up to the mountain and took his time to connect in with higher consciousness. The bump, I mean, that's just such a funny thing. When I read that, I thought, that's so funny that Charles Fillmore would say that. And especially in light of what we know now about brain science and different aspects of the brain that get lit up when we are feeling a deep sense of connection and oneness with people. But it could be part of our very daily practice to really exercise the bump. Like go to higher consciousness, go to a place of prayer. Be willing to pause before you take on one of these roles as, the one who's going to fight, or the one who's going to judge, or the one who's got to make peace with everyone, or I'm out of here, and to become aware. This is like a little homework. Look throughout the week and notice if there are particular relationships you have where one of these four characters shows up pretty regularly. Because it might be that you have that kind of relationship with one person in your family where you're just like, I can't. Thanksgiving would have been a great time to exercise this for those who have the family thing going on. But I see what a blessing to have family, that they're still here. Even if they show up in ways that you might not wish them to show up. It's such a gift for us. So feeling this sense of owning the counsel that is yours, just let's take a moment, and we're going to go into a little meditation, and I'm going to invite you to see how holding peace, this fifth way, could be something you could do. Maybe holding peace in polarized spaces. You could turn the lights off and settle in, or forgiving even when you haven't been asked. Or living from a place of soul instead of taking sides. or even saying, hey, I don't know, instead of pretending that you do. So many ways that we can be rooted in the presence of peace. So let's take a moment and just breathe together. Take a nice deep breath. And gently bring attention inward. And as we enter this quiet space, this beautiful sanctuary of the soul, it's a place where all these inner voices, this inner counsel gathers. And we can be open to that gathering today. And as you listen, you may notice the fighter within. That part of you that rises up in anger and reaction to situations, making you sort of ready for battle in any moment, heightened on the alert. Or maybe the voice you hear is the pleaser, the one who keeps the peace, always needing to avoid conflict at all cost, and needing to compromise just so that you can feel control of the situation. Or maybe there's a perfectionist sitting with you, one who holds very high standards and who judges you as you judge other people, thinking that peace will only come when everything is set right. Perhaps the one who withdraws is there too. The one who escapes and detaches, seeking peace by not feeling what's going on or engaging at all. Just be aware. Perhaps some of these voices are very familiar. And be aware they're trying to protect you. They've come into being to keep you safe, to keep you from feeling fear and chaos and confusion. And they rise up whenever we're feeling uncertain in our life, when we're feeling unseen or unheard, out of control. But right now, in this quiet place, make room for another presence. Make room for the Prince of Peace, the Christ within. Be open to that still, small voice that doesn't react. That still, small voice that doesn't need to control or demand or run away. Be present to the Prince of Peace, the divine within. It just is. Open, curious, calm and inviting, fully present in the moment. And let that presence take a seat at the head of the table, and let that presence lead. And take a moment and bring into your mind and heart a situation that you may be dealing with in your life right now. maybe a sense of uncertainty or some tension in a relationship. And gently ask yourself, what would it look like to let peace speak? To let peace respond in this situation. And to let peace choose the next step. Take a nice deep breath and just let peace fill your body, fill the breath, let it soften what might feel hard. And let it open what might feel closed or restricted. You are not at war with anyone or yourself. You are not lost. You are guided by peace. You are a royal peacemaker. And offering gratitude for this ever-increasing awareness of the divine presence as peace, the presence of divine love, grace, and forgiveness. Taking another deep and conscious breath as you're ready, bring your awareness back into your body. Feeling that sense of peace in the heart. And as you feel ready and guided, you could open your eyes.